we need to develop a stereoscopic vision where we have both women's input and men's input in order to get some depth to our understanding of history.
Okay, help us understand it. How is misandry spread?
Well, misandry is spread through popular culture in a major way, and that was what our first book was about, spreading misandry. We looked at greeting cards and jokes and TV sitcoms and films, every single genre except rap music, which we should have done, of popular culture. And the pattern we found, we did this in the 1990s, the pattern we found was that men were portrayed as inadequate, as evil, or as honorary women. And the honorary women were a minority male or a male feminist, because that was in the image that women wanted.
So an honorary female then would be an insult, obviously. That was the intention of that.
No.
No,
wait a second.
no.
I'm missing your point here. Honorary. Say it again.
Okay. The image, the only good man that appeared in these images was the honorary woman. Okay, and it was either a minority male, because there was a political alliance between minorities and feminism, or there was the male feminist who agreed with women. Okay, so that was the good man that was allowed some visibility in the portrayal of men.
I see. Ian, you buying this?
Well, I think men have felt challenged because the role of being a guy has changed radically. It used to be that we dominated everything. It used to be that we had 80% of the 90% of the infidelities. We were responsible. Now, what is it now? 51% women of infidelities are caused by women now. I mean, these are big changes that challenge you, and I think men have felt dislocated as a result of that. But I really don't take this dark view that I think people are much more progressive than we realize, and this ability to, now you can work, or you can stay at home with the kids, or you can stay at home part of the time with the kids. Now you can live with a woman or not live with a woman, or live with a man and have children or not have children, and there is relatively little shame involved with that. That's a big change.
Walter, tell me this, though. Presumably, Catherine's example of how men were always viewed hatefully and literate, not always, but a preponderance of...
Recently,
right. and a preponderance of overly critical or hateful or portrayals, that kind of thing. I mean, presumably that happens to the powerful, right? You don't pick on the powerless, you pick on the powerful. Isn't that another example of why men are still on top?
Sit in my office and see the steady procession of guys coming through who are charged with domestic assault, solid, upright citizens who've never done anything wrong in their life, very often falsely accused. They've lost, they can't go home, they can't see their kids, they can pay all the expenses, they've got to pay a lawyer, and probably they've done nothing wrong.
How often are they falsely accused?
A very, very high percentage of domestic assault cases never proceed through the courts. They get withdrawn, the women refuse to show up, we never get the answer.
So the suggestion is they're not legit claims?
They may not be legit claims. That's correct. And it's well known that those claims are often an adjunct to a divorce case, because they get tremendous leverage out of that in the issues with respect to custody and access. Although it's not necessary, mother's going to get custody no matter what.
We call Thursday's program Your Agenda because we like to take your emails, your questions, and we have one that's just come in now, so let's go to it right now. After the birth of our fourth child, this emailer says, my husband opted to exercise 6 months of parental leave, and I went back to work. Therefore, he was at home with a 6-month-old, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, and 6-year-old. His own family and friends referred to him as idling, lounging at home while I went out to work. Now, David, would you grant that there's quite a double standard on this?
I believe there is a double standard on this, yes.
And
let's change it. You know, women have claimed the right to move into men's traditional sphere of the workplace. Men claim the right to move into the sphere, women's traditional sphere, the home place. And stand up for that, men. You know, we need to actually stand up to these comments and explain how the double standard is operating.
But that's the man who's most victimized by what happens in family law. He gets a close bond with his children. He spends a lot of time with his children. He may neglect his own career. And should the wife choose, he's out of those children's lives on her whim, because she gets a divorce or she goes to the court and she gets a custody order, and he may never see those kids again should she choose. That's the guy who's most ripped off by the system as it exists.
Catherine Young, double standard out there?
Yes, very, very much so, a double standard. We see that men are sharing in fathering much more than their fathers did, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, the status of men as fathers has really fallen in the society. We're saying we don't need men for children. We don't need men in marriages. The old image used to be man as the provider, the protector, and the progenitor. And today we're saying that none of those are necessary roles for men. So
well,
it's a contradiction.
He still gets to pay the bills.
Well, it's not only that we don't need men, but very often we've just come through an era where the publicity was that the worm at the heart of every family was the father. He was abusive. He was somebody who had to be controlled.
Is it not, you know the system, the law system, obviously better than I do. So tell me, when you have cases of spousal abuse, is it not inordinately male on female violence as opposed to the other way around?
Well,
I don't know. I'm asking.
That's a complete distortion through our system. We've known for 30 years from every respectable reporting agency that the initiation of violence in relationships is equal as between men and women. Finally, Stats Canada admitted that in the year 2000 in their report and have confirmed that in their subsequent reports. Up until 2000, Stats Canada did not measure female violence against male. When they did, it turned out to be the same as everybody else, as Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Oxford and Cambridge were telling us. So there should be.
Can I just understand? There is as much female on male violence in relationships as male on female.
In every place in the world where this has been reported on, there's slightly more female on male violence than male on female violence. Stats Canada's at the end of the spectrum where there's slightly more male on female, just slightly more, 8% to 7%.
We're going to get a ton of emails tonight from people who are going to say, that Walter Fox is absolutely full of it. So give me your email address so I can direct them over to you.
I can confirm that Walter is absolutely right. In fact, Warren Farrell, who's written a number of books about this, actually approached the National Organization of Women in the USA and asked them if they knew of any studies at all in which both genders were asked the same questions about initiating and receiving violence in relationship, in which men were reported to be the larger perpetrators. And they couldn't find any. All of the studies that have asked men and women the same questions have found equal rates or greater rates from women.
And in Canada, we got distorted, and particularly Ontario, we have the documentation where the Solicitor General indicated to the police that they ought to arrest men only, so that if there's a dispute and the police are called, the guy gets arrested. And so you get these very inordinately high statistics showing that males are the perpetrators.
But Walter, they don't build battered husband shelters. They build battered wife shelters.
That's correct. That's the influence of feminism. If you ask,
that's not the influence of the facts?
No. If you ask a real feminist about facilities for men, they'll say we've got them all over the place. They're called jails.
But Walter, come on. I mean, who is the more dangerous being? A man next to a woman.
Well,
I mean, honestly.
okay.
No, seriously. From a physical point of view, who's the most dangerous?
Let's deal with that. Professor Murray Strauss at the University of the state next to Massachusetts.
Which one? There's 5 of them.
Well, all right. did a study. He started in 1980 as a feminist and did a study on violence in relationships, and he thought it was a slam dunk as a feminist. Men seem to be way more violent in situations outside of intimate relationships. He was just going to show that in relationships it was the same. The study came back and showed that it was about equal. He said, this can't be right. He did the study 3 times. This is on his website. This is an accredited professor who's an academic who knows this field. And finally he concluded, well, guess what? It's equal.